Check, testing. Testing 1, 2, check. One last time, check, testing, 1, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning to those who are watching around the world. Good evening as well. Welcome to round 2 of the CMSC Race at Home Championship with the Formula 4 cars on iRacing. My name is Nevan Jayawardena and I am going to be your commentator for the rest of this series. My apologies because I wasn't able to be there for the first round of the series. From what I heard, it was very good racing, but I will be here from this round onwards should the schedule allow it. And once again, thank you very much to CMSC and the team there for giving me this opportunity to commentate on this wonderful racing series here with such talent. And yes, we have a big incident in practice nonetheless already from what looks to be a McLaren with the Gemini livery, and if I'm not mistaken, that is our very own Thiago Pereira racing all the way in Canada. Some very known names, of course, we see in the leaderboard. We have Shyama Mendes, the number 5 car, Tehan Eranga in the very striking APMC livery that raced quite a while back. We have Brian Pereira. We have Thiago, of course, in the McLaren. We have Nishan Sayer. We have Buddhika Chaturanga, Shehan Silva, Mohammed Shan Ibrahim, Ayam Fazal and Amjad Iftika, all known names, of course. And we are yet to see some racing here. And today's track of choice is Oulton Park in the UK. For those of you who know Oulton Park, I'm sure you know of how challenging it is being one of the more club-focused tracks. But to those who are new to Oulton Park is one of those tracks where mistakes cannot be made, as we already see quite a big incident, but this is practice, so there's Shehan there. As demonstrated by 2 drivers there, we can see that Oulton Park is a track known for its very famous club racing in Formula Vs and of course the GT4s, but Oulton possesses this really strange challenge of basically trying to keep your car on the track as well as balancing overtakes, because this is a mini Monaco of sorts and it is very difficult to get your overtakes done here. So it'll be very interesting to see which driver comes out on top, of course, in the qualifying. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a big, brilliant race up ahead. A few races, heats, and of course, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Race Director has also given a reverse grid. I could be wrong. But 5 seconds to go in the practice session, which means bring on qualifying. And that spin was beautifully timed there. to basically round off the session. And I'm sure as we see the names change, we can also see Kevan Samarajiva and Savi Ratnayaka in the lobby as well with us. Shehan Silva there as well. As we move on to the next session, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get this round underway. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, I believe qualifying is already underway with 13 minutes on the clock, as all the drivers of the racing series are gonna do their level best to qualify as high as possible on this track here, where overtaking is quite difficult, as I said before. So let's run you through the names I see on the board. We have Viren Boteju, Shevan Vitarana, Kevan Samarajiva, Savi Ratnayaka, Praveen Peter, Ayam Fazal, Fauzul Alim, Amjad Iftika, Tehan Eranga, Shehan Silva, Tiago Pereira, and of course many more drivers. This is going to be a very stacked grid, of course, as you see the gravel. And there's, I think that was Savi Ratnayaka going a little wide there on the gravel, pushing the absolute limits of that F4 car. We know that these cars, being formulas, have stunning grip levels, but of course these being the F4 cars, they're going to be a little low on downforce as compared to its let's say elder brothers in the F3, F2 and F1 category. So the F4 serving as a great feeder series for beginner drivers, and of course those who are professionals as well, pushing the limits between fine grip and of course losing the back end, noting that these cars don't have any driver assists whatsoever. Like I spoke and I commentated with Tiago Pereira, who joined me in the commentary booth for the APMC. We both discussed that these cars are very finicky on the brakes as well as the traction. So the drivers, of course, having to balance everything out here for one blistering lap here at Oulton Park. But they have 11 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. So I'm sure they'll be able to manage that as well, as we ride following Savi Ratnayaka, who is getting quite the tour of, I don't know who the car is in front, but he's getting quite the tour off of that car. Maybe this, yes, I think he's gonna start his flying lap. And oh, he's already gone wide, and I think that means an invalidation for Savi there. Dirty air, of course, affecting the drivers. If you follow way too close to an F4 car, there is a possibility that you could get caught in the dirty air, and I think that's where Savi had the issue over there. But I'm sure he'll recover, and I think the only thing going through Savi's mind right now is just get a lap in, and he'll have to balance following the car in front, because any closer he could get caught in the dirty air, and any further behind he could potentially lose some valuable seconds from the slipstream and the dirty air. So it's a balancing game, of course, as we see sometimes recorded on the board, with Fauzul Alim taking the fastest lap so far with a 1 minute 34.226, followed by Harshula Dharmadasa, followed My apologies. Harshada Damadas is setting a 1 minute 35, and Thiago Pereira in P3 with a net P3 setting a 1 minute 35.348. Buddhika Chaturanga following behind with a 1 minute 36, and Arshad Iftika following with a 136. As you see somebody going wide there in the penultimate corner of the track, and I'm sure whoever that was must be kicking themselves, because I feel like that would have been the lap of their lives. As Brian Pereira crosses the line and drops Harshila from P2 down to P3, setting a 1 minute 34.324. Brian Pereira with many racing accolades under his belt, being a multi-time, or is that the way to say it? A multiple GT7 race at home championship winner, as well as having represented Sri Lanka at the virtual esports, the virtual Olympics championship in Singapore back in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So keep your eyes on Brian Pereira, and of course we have Thiago Pereira, a man who is no stranger to the racing world in Sri Lanka as well, who has had multiple race wins in karting, as well as having driven the Nissan Marches at Katakurunda, and going to represent the Worth Racing team in the upcoming Saudi World Series Endurance Championship as well. Polishing his racing skills, as noted by many people all over the world, with esports coming in as a grassroots level motorsport. Extensive realism provided by iRacing as well, so thank you to iRacing as well for providing the codes for the drivers here to take part in the event. The follow on board Shravan Vitarna with that Moza livery, as he loses it in that chicane there. Very fine margins, as Tehane Ranga is the new man to watch, who has gone on pole. Minute 34.045. Brilliant stuff from Tehan there. Of course, a man who is no stranger to the CMSC esports world as well, having driven the very famous Golden Mustang, as we see Savi Ratnayaka losing the back end of that F4 again. Shamal Mendes setting a net P1 already with a 1 minute 33.796. Knocking Tehan Eranga off pole position. And now, that was Shamal Mendes who Savi was following earlier. So Shamal Mendes has set a P1 already with a 1 minute 33.796. Currently the man to beat. As you see Savi settling right behind another driver again. I think this time he's following Brian Pereira, looking for that ever so valuable toe down this, not down, but around this track, as a very cheeky lockup inevitably results in Savi losing the toe. As we follow on board Tehan Eranga now, as somebody goes wide there in the qualifying lap with 7 minutes left in this session. Will we see a late charge from any of the other drivers? We're waiting to see. As you can see, Thiago Pereira there following, I think that is Brian Pereira if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that McLaren livery is unmistakable. That is Thiago Pereira chasing down the toe. I'm sure he's on a flying lap as well. You see Savi Ratnayaka briefly zip past the screen, followed by, oops, there goes, I think that was Brian, gone wide. I could be wrong, but now Thiago, I'm pretty sure, has got a slingshot. So let's stay on board Thiago as he runs an ultimate corner. A make or break corner, as you need to go clip that apex and go wide early on the power. And as Thiago crosses the line, will we see an improvement? Thiago from P6. It does not seem like an improvement, and Thiago has actually got 5 tenths. Nearly 6 tenths difference between his best lap and that previous lap. So the slipstream did not help him as much. Shyamal Mendes setting the overall, improving his overall time, going with a 1 minute 33.638. And of course, your top three so far is Shyamal Mendes with a 1 minute 33.6, followed by Tehan Eranga with a 1 minute 33.9. 3/10 off Shyamal Mendes, but he's getting there. Followed by Mohammad Fawzul Alim, Brian Pereira, Savi Ratnayaka, Harshula Dharmadasa, Thiago Pereira, Buddhika Chaturanga, Shehan Silva, and Shevan Vitarana. Close racing, close action, all in qualifying, as you see drivers tucking behind each other in an attempt to get some slipstream to try and improve their lap times. But it is a balancing game, like I said before. Getting too close means too much dirty air. Getting too far behind means losing that all-important toe. Following Shehan Silva in the number 1 car, that's striking white, black and green livery, and now we're on board Arshad Iftikhar, or I think we're still the number 3 car, and Shyamal Mendes. iRacing dipping left, right and center, trying to select one car because everybody's on their flyers right now. There's gravel and there's the pole sitter spun out. I'm sure he was on an attempt to try and improve his lap time, but unfortunately he spun out just before the main straight. And does he have time to go around for one session? I'm pretty sure he does. As you see, as we're following Harshula Dharmadasa right now, or maybe not, we're following the number 3. Gravel getting pulled onto the track. This is going to become a hazard now at this point. If the drivers start pulling gravel on the track, this is going to cause a major issue, as we see that gravel as well on the off run, on the off bit of the track. And yeah, all that gravel is going to loosen the grip of the track, and I'm pretty sure the track is running green at the moment. I don't think the track is at its optimal level yet, not like what we see in racing, as there's another off on the track there. But yes, all that gravel is going to cost grip, and I'm sure in the final sector of Oulton Park as well, all the cars are going to get really squirrely, and it's going to be up to the drivers to actually pull through and maintain that grip level to try and get a faster lap time. But anyway, the top 3 has not shifted. It seems as if the top 3 has been decided, but never say never. There's 2 minutes left. If you're gonna start a lap, it's gonna be now. Following number 25, or now 24, Savi Ratnayaka, who has set a net P5 with a 1 minute 34.7. And of course now we're on board Buddhika Chaturanga, and now I am Fazal. One minute 30 to go, and I'm sure now is the make or break zone, the death minutes of qualifying. No more mistakes, pedal to the metal. All drivers are gonna risk it all right now to try and get one more blistering lap time in an attempt to try and gain a higher place. Who will stack up where? We're yet to find out. .45 seconds to go on the clock, and I'm sure all the drivers will try and make an attempt. As we see Brian Pereira, the line with a 1 minute 34.003, and Tehan Eranga has just crossed the line to go 33.634. It's a battle between Shyamal Mendes and Tehan Eranga. Has snatched it away from Shyamal Mendes. Tehan Eranga, the man on provisional. Are we going to see a late attempt from Shyamal Mendes to try and improve on his time? As they're following Savi Ratnayaka now, we're going to try and gain a few more seconds to try and get a little high. As you see a lock up there from Shehan Silva, and a qualifying attempt over. Savi Ratnayaka following a very close. No, the session has ended. So I believe that has left I believe the order is going to be a grid reverse. I could be wrong, but with Thiago Pereira, yes, it is a grid reverse. So P1 to P8 has been reversed, and we are having Mr. Thiago Pereira in a net P1 as of right now. So your current grid order is Thiago Pereira in P1, Nishan Saya in P2, Harshula Dharmadasa in P3, Savi Ratnayaka in P4, Fawzul Alim in P5, Brian Pereira in P6, Shyama Mendes in P7, and Tehane Ranga, the man who set pole in qualifying, in P8. So it is a reverse grid with the top 8 switching orders, or switching positions rather, reversing them. It's going to serve for a very interesting opening lap here at Oulton Park. As we wait for the lights to go green on round 2 of the CMSC F4 iRacing Championship. We can hear the cars revving.
Green, green, green.
Waiting for the green flag. It's green, green, green. First heat of the iRacing Championship. Thiago Pereira dips with Nishan for on his outside. Savi Ratnayaka on the inside, claiming P3 as number 4 wide. Savi Ratnayaka with a late charge going to P3. Thiago Pereira still leading as he's being challenged by Nishan right now. As we see lockups galore, we don't know who following Shyama Mendes right now, but Thiago looks to have gained the lead, and I believe that was Nishan. But Thiago Pereira holds by Savi Ratnayaka, Brian Pereira, Fawzul Alim and Harshula Dharmadasa into the first open hairpin of Oulton Park, as we see another car 9, that is, or 999, that is Alim trying to make a Brian Pereira there, and Tehane Ranga, Harshala Dharmadasa and Shyama Mendes for I am Fazal, my apologies, Shehan Silva and Buddhi Ranga. Chaotic open lap. I believe Nishan would have wanted something to go a little bit better there with that initial lockup, but it was a mistake, and unfortunately I believe he's at the back of the pack right now. But Thiago Pereira leading the way, followed by Savi Ratnayaka, looking extremely close. Who's looking extremely close to Thiago Pereira there, and he's trying to make a move with Savi Ratnayaka going on the outside, challenging Thiago Pereira, but no, Thiago says I will keep my place. And thank you very much. Yes, Thiago Pereira is leading the way. The reverse grid certainly has shaken up few things here, as Fawzul looking extremely impatient to around Brian Pereira, as he's going to look to move around the outside. Will Brian see him? It looks like Fawzul has the toe, or does Brian have the toe? It's a drag race between Fawzul and Brian, but it looks like Fawzul has got the third place on lockdown with a beautiful move set up from the penultimate corner of Oulton Park here, and Fawzul taking that third step of the podium away from Brian Pereira, leaving Brian with a lot of work to do right now. Savi Ratnayaka still on Thiago's gearbox, attempting to look, as we see Fawzul making a very late braking attempt, causing a bit of a lockup there that nearly would have spelled disaster for Savi and Fawzul had that lockup gone a little more longer. But Fawzul manages to keep his front wing out of Savi's gearbox, and they're still racing as Savi is giving Thiago a right-hole run for his money. Look at how these cars are so equally matched. We can see Thiago, Savi, Fawzul, Brian and Tehan all within a mere second of each other. And this is what makes F4 racing so interesting on iRacing. It's a spec series. Everyone is on equal cars, fixed setups. It's all up to the driver's skill to actually maintain and carry out a proper race finish. Thiago maintaining that beautiful lead, and I'm sure in the colors that he is supporting in this year's F1 championship as well, I'm sure he likes to keep that McLaren in P1 and try to keep the likes of the number 24, Savi Ratnayaka, behind him as Fauzul is looking for that P2. He's looking for silver. Is he going to cost a move? And there's Savi off, and that's going to pull a lot of gas onto the track. This is certainly interesting, but here comes Brian Pereira racing from Australia. We have quite the diverse grid. We have people in Australia. I'm commentating from Belarus. Thiago is racing from Canada. And of course, the championship is in Sri Lanka. Diversity in Lanka as Savi and Thiago going practically side by side into what was a dangerous corner as Fauzul has capitalized on that little move by Savi. Fauzul sitting incredibly patient with a bucket of popcorn in that cockpit, watching the battle unfold in front of him. And once Savi makes one move, Fauzul is like, I will be taking the top, thank you very much. And now Savi is getting pressured by the man down under, that is Brian Pereira. Is he going to get a move done into the chicane? Brian backs off, and what a level-headed drive that was. Savi having fallen behind a little bit. Fauzul, I don't think is going to settle for that P2. I think Fauzul's going to go for the P1 because, we're following Tehan Eranga now, who's looking extremely close to the Aussie himself. As we see, iRacing has focused on, there's a lot of gravel kick there from, I believe that was Savi. But Thiago is looking, and that's Fauzul making a move. Thiago Pereira. That is a beautiful indeed from Fauzul Alim. Fauzul currently running P1. And that's the McLaren of Thiago Pereira dethroned. But here comes Savi. Fauzul has made quite the charge in this early heat. Fauzul looking incredibly composed as opposed to the other drivers behind. I'm sure Fauzul is getting in the heads of the drivers as well. But Fauzul with a titanic charge up the field to get P1. Followed by Thiago, Savi, Brian and Tehan. We're seeing Thiago and Savi. It looks like positions 2, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th are extremely close to each other. Fauzul is apparently running away from the pack. All this fighting is not doing Thiago Pereira any good. The man who had the lead at the start of this race is slowly losing it because there is a very angry Savi Ratnayaka trying to chase down and get P2. And as well as Brian Pereira trying to chase that P3 down. Everyone is basically fighting each other here. It's a vicious cycle between all these drivers. As you see, Brian setting up the move on Savi Ratnayaka. Is he going to dead braking? Savi going on the outside, but he couldn't defend it. That's Brian Pereira and Savi in an effective drag race. Savi getting an incredible tow from Thiago Pereira as well. These two drivers, Savi and Brian, side by side. They're going to go into the corner, still side by side. And that's Savi, I think, has reclaimed P3. Yes, that is Brian tucking behind Savi, waiting for the next setup. And I'm like it costed Thiago. Savi has got his 2nd place running away from him in the form of Thiago Pereira. But Savi is left to charge up the field to try and gain on Thiago Pereira, who in turn is trying to gain on Fauzul Alim. And as it stands, it seems that Fauzul is running away. The man is in a different time zone at this point. He is, that is an over-exaggeration, but Fauzul is running away. Thiago has to work really hard here to catch him. But I don't think Thiago is more focused on Fauzul right now than he is Savi Ratnayaka, as Savi dips to the outside in an attempt to try and get Thiago, which is potentially costing his lap time, bringing Brian back into the fight, who is inevitably running away from Shyammal Mendes. Shyammal Mendes and Tehan Eranga falling away from this battle for 2nd as it is. It seems as if, here we go, there's a move set up by Savi, with Thiago getting a little bit dicey on the throttle there. And that's Savi! Savi Ratnayaka has had a mistake, and that's a one. Oh dear, what happens? As you see, Brian getting tested by Shyammal Mendes, and that's Shyammal Mendes has capitalized on Savi Ratnayaka's mistake there, and Brian's little upset there as well, and Shyammal Mendes is now in the fight for P3. But oh dear, what happened to Savi Ratnayaka there? I'm sure it was a little bit of a kick on the back end of the car, but that was tragic for Savi there, and I'm sure he would have wanted that to go a little bit differently, but the pressure for the fight here, the pressure for P2 is certainly not one to forget about. I mean, Savi had a good race, unfortunately, but I saw a rear wing coming off, or was that his front? Unfortunately, Savi, I think that spelled disaster for his Heat 1 race here, which now puts Shyammal Mendes on the gearbox of Thiago Pereira, who certainly does not have a little breathing room here, as Fawzul Alim sets a new fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute 34.6. And there's Thiago Pereira getting challenged by Shyammal Mendes again. The McLaren versus Shyammal Mendes, it's a braking challenge. Who's going to be the first on the brakes? It's side by side into the chicane, really. Both the drivers trying to stay out of each other's way, and Brian Pereira is causing, and that's a collision from Brian Pereira, knocking Shyammal Mendes. And I don't know if that was a race, but Shyammal Mendes effectively out of the fight here in P2. Brian Pereira is in P3, and that potentially costed Shyammal Mendes the fight for a podium, and that was a very, very, very brave move by Shyammal as well. But Thiago Pereira, I feel like, has a little bit more breathing room, or I say that, does he? Brian Pereira looking a little closer. Is Brian going to take on the likes of Thiago here? Coming down the main straight of Oulton Park, it doesn't look like Brian's going to make a move, but Thiago maintains his P2. Brian looking a little bit closer, dipping to the outside, maybe in an attempt to confuse Thiago. It looks like Brian has stormed ahead. What has happened to Thiago? Thiago is slowing down, it seems. Maybe confusion or something's wrong with that car, I believe. But Brian Pereira, P2. Now we ride on board Shahan Silva chasing down Amjad Iftikhar. This is the fight for P16. As we see, Shahan Silva managing to keep a very level-headed charge towards Amjad Iftikhar. Number 8 versus number 1. There's a little bit of a lock-up there from Amjad Iftikhar there. I think that has set up Shahan Silva for a beautiful charge, and there he goes, sailing past Amjad Iftikhar. It's always a little mistakes, as you see, a puff of smoke there. I wonder who that was. But yes, it's always a little mistakes. One lock-up, one tiny kick of oversteer could spell the difference between a potential podium and a higher position, or the end of the race for you. Following Shan now getting chased by, I believe that is a lap car, but now we are on board. Who are we following? Oh, we are following Kevan Samarajiva chasing down Praveen Peter in P12. This is the battle for P12. It is between Praveen Peter, Kevan Samarajiva, and there is Savi Ratnayaka, who I believe has had a pit stop to repair that car, and he has come back on track in a net P14. And Savi is looking extremely racy against Kevan Samarajiva here in the very distinctly coloured CMSC F4 car, but the Sasya net car of Savi is right. Kevan Samarajiva's gearbox says Kevan dips to the inside and again into the braking zone. Savi looking for a move on Kevan, but he does not make it count as Kevan has been, and there he goes. Savi will sail past, and that is P13. Kevan with a bit of oversteer there, and I think that unfortunately spelled the end of that charge. But Savi is now on a renewal charge with P13, and I think it's going to be P12 with a very late move from Savi there. And yes, that is a P12 overtaking Praveen Peter, as Savi is left doing damage control here, unfortunately, after that incident that happened at the earlier bits of this race. Well, 2 minutes, effectively 2.5 minutes I should say, left in this Heat 1 race. Praveen Peter charging to try and get that P12 back, and look who's joined the fight. That's Buddhiga Chitranga, who is looking for that P12, P12, yes, my apologies, P12. Oulton Park claiming victims left, right and centre. This track is no joke. It tests a driver's mental capacity and how they can maintain a strong determination, I should say, to try and keep your position while trying to fend off other cars behind you. And when it's a Formula race, especially Formula 4s with cars that have at least a little bit of downforce, it certainly is a challenge. So far, Fawzul Alim is now in a different time zone as we see him getting past the lap cars on the mini-map on the right of the screen here, ladies and gentlemen. And I believe Brian Pereira, Thiago Pereira, whoa, there we go. That was a big mistake from somebody there. As you see, a bit of an late move, I should say, from Buddhika Chaturanga to take P13 off the hands of Praveen Peter. That was a beautiful move. I see Tehaneranga. Is that that was Tehaneranga. Now we're on board Brian Pereira. What happened? Something happened there. Right now, Brian Pereira is running in P2, and I believe he has overtaken the lap car of Kevan Samarajiva, and that's Tehaneranga down in P6. What has happened? We don't know, but it seems there was some issue that happened earlier on causing him to slow down. Maybe traction loss or maybe worn out tires, who knows, but it looks like the session is over as the marshal waved the finish or the white flag. I believe this is the final lap of the session, as we see the current order that Fawzul Alim, Brian Pereira, Thiago Pereira, Harshad Amadasa, Nishan Saya, Tehaneranga, Shan, Shamal Mendes. Apologies, I think the mic cut off there. But yes, your top 8 is set, it seems, as we are following on board Tehaneranga in that beautiful APMC livery that raced a while back when Sri Lanka held the Asia Pacific Motorsport Championship at the Sri Lanka karting circuit Bandaragama. Very nostalgic livery as of right now, but Tehan is running that purely for nostalgia. It is a good thing to see. As we see, is that Tehan letting by lapped cars? I believe so, as he's leaving the man Viren Botejo to battle against Shevan Vitarana, and I think he'll have a chance because I saw Shevan dip his tires in the dirt. Are we going to have a little bit of a place change here just before the race actually ends? Viren Botejo still chasing down Shevan Vitarana, and I believe the race is over. And I think so, that is Fawzul Alim who had taken the win, followed by Brian Pereira in P2 and Thiago Pereira in P3, as iRacing frantically jumps around trying to find some action on the track, and I believe it's found it in the form of Fasal trying to make an overtake. Is it going to be a late move? I think so. There was like there, but it seems like they kept it relatively clean. Still racing to the line. And there's Iham dipping right outside in an attempt to try and get an overtake done. I think he's dipped out a little too early. Didn't get any toe down there. Mistake from, I missed the name, I didn't see the name, but that was Iham Fazal who had taken that, capitalized on it, and has managed to hold on to it, as Buddhika Chaturanga and Savi Ratnayaka going at an all-out frenzy of a fight here in the final stages of the race, kicking up gravel onto the track, as we see there from the tires of Savi Ratnayaka. And I believe that is the race done with this final corner. Buddhika Chaturanga, a little slow. Savi dipping out to the inside. It's a drag race to the end. Savi getting extremely close to the wall there. But that is a beautiful fight, as Savi nearly took it off of Buddhika's hands. But that is your top 3 in the first heat of the iRacing series of the Oulton Park round 2. That is Fawzul Alim with a late charge, or early charge rather, at the start of the race to take P1, followed by Brian Pereira in P2 and Thiago Pereira in P3. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Heat 1 finished, and now we move on to the consolation race, where the order, I believe, is now reversed. So, the top 8 from the previous race is now reversed, putting Shamal Mendis in P1, the man who qualified pole, followed by Shan Ibrahim and Tehan Eranga in P3. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we wait for the green lights. Cars driving away, and there's a jump start, I believe, of Tehan Eranga, and it's a green flag, and oh dear, Tehan Eranga has had a horrendous jump start. It's Shamal Mendis who leads the way, and the leaderboard is having a seizure in of itself, and I don't know who is there, but judging by the cars on track, I see Savi Ratnaka is still on the gearbox of Buddhika Chaturanga. Pardon me if I missed that, pardon me for getting a bit tongue-tied here, but there's Kevan Samarajiva, I see there, the leaderboard freaking out, but it seems that Tehan Eranga might have a penalty for that jump, or maybe it was ping, who knows, we'll see, but as of right now, it's Tehan Eranga followed by Shamal Mendis and Nishan Saya here, as you see lockups galore from the pack up in front, as that's Shevhan Vitarana, who has made a beautiful send into that corner there. And we are underway. Consolation race, another 15-minute race here. Now's the chance for some of the drivers who couldn't get up there earlier enough to try and charge up field, as there is a blinking car of Harshada Dhammadasa in front of Thiago Pereira in the very distinctly liveried McLaren car, who also has a very old friend of his. I'd like to say hello. That's Fawzul Alim, dipping out of Thiago's inside, and this time Thiago covers off Fawzul Alim in an attempt to try and keep P6 to himself. Racing all the way from Canada, the man is probably extremely sleepy and tired, but he is not showing any signs of that. I believe that was Nishan, and here comes Fawzul again. Fawzul dipping around the outside, and I believe that was Tehan Eranga who has dipped into the pits. Yes, I think it was a drive-through. Thiago and Fawzul. Thiago does not want to mess with here, as Fawzul reclaims Thiago's position of P6, or P4 rather, as people have dipped into the pits as well. Excuse me. I am trying to follow each car at a time. That is Fawzul Alim, who has appeared out of thin air in an attempt to try and chase after Shan. Is he going to make a move on Shan? That is incredible. I thought he was going to make a move there, but Fawzul tucked behind, as the track appears to have gone a bit gloomy. Could we see potential rain here? As you know, the weather being a very important factor in the race, who knows if it could start downpouring at any given moment, sending the track in absolute chaos. But here it's a battle between Shan and Fawzul. This battle, Fawzul extremely late on the brakes, and there we go, sailing round the outside of that chicane. Fawzul is on a charge yet again. That car is on the absolute ragged edge, and Fawzul has tamed it as a car off in the back. There's mistakes, unfortunately, costing some drivers a race, and I think I see that Praveen Peter, that okay, no, we're on board Kevan Samarajiva now, chasing down a good old friend of his in the form of Viren Botejo. And behind Kevan is, I can't see the name, that is Yusuf in P10, followed by Iham in P10. Wait, there's the move. That's Iham now in P10. Shamal Mendis 134.575 leading the way, and Harshada Dhammadasa holding that P2, but of course 1 minute and 2/10 behind him is that red car of Fawzul Alim, who has been the man to watch as of right now in Heat 1. And there's Kevan, who has gone off the track and he spun back onto the track, and that's a big collision, flying in a loop tune. And I believe that was Kevan Samarajiva who has indeed spun back
off the track and onto the track and has inevitably caused a collision. So to both those drivers, unfortunately, that is their race pretty much over, unless they can repair the car and come back out. And Tiago Pereira, who looks to want another position, challenging Sean. As we see Fawzul on the back of Harshal Dharmadas ready. If iRacing or the fourth wall, our good friends back from APMC, could dip back to that battle, as we don't know who and where, as everybody. This is not rallycross, ladies and gentlemen. This is F4. They are not doing a joker lap. They are, I think, making little micro mistakes. But I believe that is Gesit Ahangamage in P13, who has tried to make a move on Shehan, and there's cars everywhere on the back straight as Harshal is getting challenged by Fawzul, and Fawzul has made a bit of a habit now with that exact same move into the first corner. You'd think the drivers would see it coming. Evidently not. Fawzul P2, Harshal P3, and Tiago still trying to overtake Sean here. He's trying to make it work. He's trying to stay within the toe, and Buddhiga Chaturanga is still very, very close to Tiago here. Harshal has fallen already to Fawzul, unfortunately, I believe, as a result of that overtake, and I think he's got caught in dirty air. Tiago, who is trying to catch Sean. Like I said before, the dirty air is not the place you want to be here when trying to chase after another car, especially if you're following them through corner complexes. It's not fair, as Tiago is dipping to the outside of Sean, and as the leaderboard says, he is. Can Tiago maintain the lead? And big collision between Sean and Tiago, and unfortunately that was a big crash. I believe Sean didn't see him in his mirrors, but Tiago got squeezed into the apex there, and unfortunately that's Tiago Pereira who was caught in an incident. The McLaren, we've had Oscar Piastri go off in the sprint race in F1, and now we've had Tiago Pereira in the consolation race here of the CMSC iRacing Championship round 2 at Oulton Park. What happened there? I'm sure Tiago is happy with that, as he was not left any racing room, in the wise words of Fernando. The time you have to leave the space, and I'm sure that's going to be Tiago's plea to Mr. Race Director himself, Rocket the Raccoon, aka Denon Flavia Sabe Sekara, who was our Chief Steward at the APMC and now Mr. Race Director over in this iRacing Championship. Tiago Pereira now effectively left to do damage control to try and chase down the likes of, I believe that is Buddhiga Chaturanga, or I think that is a lap car in front of Tiago, because I don't think Tiago is chasing down the number 21. He should be allowed to go. Yes, he will. Tiago has breezed past the lap car, and Iham, hold on a minute. Iham is very close to Tiago here. Is Tiago going to get challenged by the likes of Iham Fazal here? No, it looks like Tiago is not concerned with Iham as of now, and yes, that is Viren Boteju chasing after. That is not Teha Neranga. Yes, I believe he's a lap car. So Viren is getting chased by Brian Pereira, as Brian had a little of a real lockup there. But excuse me. But Viren Boteju and Brian Pereira, there goes Brian Pereira. I was tongue-tied there, I did not know what to say, but yes, Brian Pereira breezes past Viren Boteju and takes that position. Meanwhile, up in front, Tiago Pereira extremely close, or should I say Iham Fazal very close to Tiago Pereira here. Are we going to see a move into the first corner? It seems that they are going to stay behind, and there's Teha Neranga behind Iham Fazal, as Iham goes a little stretching the absolute limits of the track, testing the limits between grip, a faster time, and loss of grip itself. All of this fighting is bringing Tehan back, and I'm sure Tehan and Tiago, both in the run for damage control here, is now fighting off a very, very, very hungry Iham Fazal right now, who desperately wants to get past Tiago's P7 and effectively claim that for himself. With 6 minutes left in the session, the race is still pretty much underway, as Syamal Mendis is still holding on to the top, but we see the timing sheets, ladies and gentlemen. Fawzul Alim with a 1 minute 34.1. He is coming for Shamal Mendes, but it doesn't look like Shamal Mendes is under threat because he is 7.7 seconds behind him. So effectively, Shamal Mendes is cruising away with that P1. Fawzul Alim, we saw how he was charging last race. I'm sure he's still charging for that P1. So still more to go in this session, ladies and gentlemen. 5.5 minutes effectively. Anything can happen, as we saw last race, with a move by Tehan Eranga in an attempt to try and upset Iham. It doesn't look like it has, but Iham has fallen behind and is now under pressure from Tehan Eranga. Thiago Pereira, who has effectively sailed away and is getting much closer to Buddhiga Chaturanga, has no more threats from Iham, but now has threats from Tehan Eranga. The very tight train here we're seeing between Thiago, Iham and Tehan right now. But it seems as if Tehan also wants to get past Iham, getting incredibly close. And now it seems as if Iham is now closer to... In fact, this train is going to start bunching up. Tehan going the wider line, as you see there, in an attempt to potentially get more downforce because the dirty air might be throwing him off. There's Tehan dipping to the inside, and I think he's made the move stick on Iham as they're going side by side. And Tehan backs off. Iham has made a bit of a lock. And it seems there goes Tehan again. He's gonna... Iham dips to the inside and now he's moving again to the outside and he's covered off Tehan. Brilliant driving from Iham here, holding off Tehan Eranga. Tehan Eranga getting beautifully dragged on by Iham for Iham here, and he's still up on Iham's gearbox, managing to hold on and get that all-important toe off of Iham as we're looking at Iham. Dick! And there goes Brian Pereira. Through goes Hamilton fashion. There goes Brian Pereira, who has come out of nowhere. He has, well, you could say he has come from down under. I apologize for that bad joke, folks, but there goes Brian Pereira up on Tehan Eranga and Iham, who has made a mistake. And now Brian Pereira chasing after Thiago Pereira, who is probably looking at his rearview mirror and wondering, when did he get there? Well, anyway, Thiago still has a long way ahead of him. 3 minutes to be precise to try and hold off a man from down under. Brian Pereira racing from Australia, of course, against a man racing from Canada. An international racing series here. We have in the likes of the CMSC F4 Championship Round 2 at Oulton Park. So we now have a battle for P5 as Thiago has managed to close on Buddhiga Chaturanga, who's a little slow there, and Thiago is fast, but Brian Pereira, who by Thiago, Buddhiga is holding up. He's holding up Thiago, and it's going to be. Is that 3 wide? No, it's not 3 wide, but it's Buddhiga Chaturanga and Brian Pereira who's now being held up, and now Thiago was not held up that time. Thiago is going to try, who's getting pushed on grass by Brian Pereira, and Tehan Eranga is going to try and make a move side. Buddhiga Chaturanga making an incredibly hard mobile chicane between Brian Pereira and Thiago, but it seems like Brian has not got hurt, but Thiago certainly has got hurt as he's getting charged and tackled by Tehan Eranga. We don't know what happened there, but who's going to come up? Seems as if Tehan Eranga has made a move on Thiago Pereira and has stolen that P7 from Thiago. It has not been Thiago's day today in the consolation race, unfortunately, as Brian Pereira makes an aggressive dip to the outside and now an inside, and iRacing has completely forgotten how to race direct as Brian makes a move, and there's a lockup from Buddhiga as well. Tehan getting pressured by Buddhiga. Brian, having come out of seemingly left field, has sailed away, overtaken Buddhiga, overtaken Tehan, and now there's Buddhiga and Tehan and Thiago involved as well. Oh, it's absolute chaos here. And Bundika has lost his rear wing. Oh my goodness, everything has kicked off and it is all good. Final minute of Bundika Chaturanga with extreme drag reduction tactics has unfortunately lost his rear wing. Then Tehane Ranga and Thiago Pereira have all gotten involved in an incident in the last minute as you see a plume of smoke from Viren Boteju getting chased by Shehan Silva, who is now getting squirrely on the rear end. It's all kicked off now, ladies and gentlemen, as Viren Boteju is trying to Silva, who dips to the outside, takes the joker lap on Oulton Park, but still manages to stay behind Viren, unfortunately. But oh my goodness, I am losing my voice. But such is the nature of the CMSC F4 Championship. It's all kicked off in the consolation race here, ladies and I believe it's the last lap of the race. Let's look to see what the flag is, and that appears to be the white flag. So yes, there will be one more race against Viren Boteju and Shehan Silva, who is very eager to cut the grass of Oulton Park here as he's stretching the absolute limits of the track. And Viren Boteju still managing to keep a close head, and that's Thiago Pereira with coming out of his car, and I think that was a lock, and there's more chaos for Thiago. Somebody else on in the background. What is going on in today's race? There's chaos, there's pandemonium, and it's off in the consolation as Shehan Silva is going for a tighter line on Viren Boteju, but manages to stay in front. Viren fighting off Shehan Silva until the very last corner. Shehan Silva still wanting that position off of Viren as we dip away and go to Amjad Iftika and Nishan Sayer. A fight. iRacing, fourth wall, please move up to the front of the pack. There's chaos, there's pandemonium everywhere. Yeah, there's somebody on the track, and that's Nishan Sayer. It's not been a good day for Nishan here, but we're back with Viren Boteju and Shehan Silva. It's deja vu from the previous lap as we're looking to see if Shehan can make a move, but Viren still holding composure against Shehan, and there's more being kicked onto the track. Shehan stretching the absolute boundaries of this track, and I believe that is Viren with a small lock up, but he will hold it. And I believe that is the end of the concert. That is the end, and Viren stays ahead of Shehan Silva. My goodness, I have lost my voice, ladies and gentlemen. It was worth it. You have an unfortunately Thiago Pereira and there is more chaos as Thiago just sends it into the front of IHAM and comes in a net P10. Very unfortunate race for Thiago Pereira there, but there is your top three of the consolation race. Shamal Mendes in P1, the man who qualified in pole, followed by Fawzul Ali, the very hungry man here for another in P2, and Harshul Madasa in P3. What a race from start to finish, as some cars are coming home with only 3 wheels in the form of Shan. Such was the consolation race of this round 2 in the F4 Championship. My goodness, what a race that was. Ladies and gentlemen, if I inherently sound like I've lost my voice, it's because I have indeed lost my voice. What was that race? Absolute carnage, chaos, pandemonium. But that is the beauty of this championship, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody on the absolute limit in an attempt to try and win the race. Of course, every driver, even the best, is going to make a slight mistake at some point, and that's okay. But now we are in the warm-up phase for the next race, and I believe there will be, actually I don't know, maybe there could be a qualifying session, maybe there could be the same positions from last race, who knows. But whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be one interesting race, to say the least. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and now it's time for the feature race. And it seems as if it will be the same order from the consolation race. So we have Shyamal Mendis, Fawzul Alim, Harsharad Amadasa, Shevan Vitarana, Brian Pereira, Tehan Eranga, Viren Botejo, Shehan Silva, Ayam Fazal, and Thiago Pereira in the top 10 of the feature race. I believe this is the lap race. As we wait for the green flag, all the cars revving the engines. Green, green, green. Out, and we are underway. It is a 30-minute race, and Shyamal Mendis takes the early lead. No chaos into corner one. But Vitarana, who has made a move on Harsharad Amadasa, and it is still side by side. The fight for P3 seems to be over. It's Shevan Vitarana who won P3, but Harsharad Amadasa. Oops, there's been a mistake. I am getting tongue-tied. Something's happened. But oh, there's much chaos in lap 1, and everyone is everywhere. There's cars here, there. I don't know who got involved, but there's already chaos, and we're following along Buddhiga Chaturanga and Ayam Fazal. If there's more dirt kicked up everywhere, it seems that all the drivers. And there's another one gone. And there's more contact. There's gravel being pulled on. Pretty soon this is going to race at this point. If there's going to be so much dirt and gravel on the track, there's lockups galore into the chicane. Trying to make a move, and that's Kevan Samarajiva and Shehan Silva. There's Shehan trying to pull out and try and gain a position on, I believe that is Helica. And there's Shehan, Helica, Brian Ferreira. Getting all mixed up, and there's rear flying everywhere. Drag reduction as we're losing rear wings and competitors as we are with time. And Praveen Peter now chasing after Buddhiga Chaturanga. as of right now, the top three, Shyama Mendes, Fawzul Aleem and Shevan Vitarna, more dirt getting pulled onto the track. As you see, I am Fazal. Yes, more people are going off track. I believe they touched the corner. I think that was, I don't know who that was, but there's people, Buddhiga Chaturanga, dipping into the pit. They have to fix some damage, but my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful race underway. I see that there's a lap. Maybe it is either one of the two, like 30 laps and then 30 minutes. Who knows? But oh, there's something flew off from his car there. I don't know who that is. I think Kevan. But something flew off his car when he hit that curb. I don't know if I wouldn't put it past iRacing to have diffuser damage. I believe that some part of that car may have been his diffuser. But whatever it is, Praveen Peter with running with no front wing. That car must be a boat to turn. Oh, hang on a minute. He has a front wing. I could have sworn I just saw he had no front wing. Maybe it was the reflection. But anyway, we see that. My apologies. I'm losing my throat. But Shevan Vitarana and Harshala Dharmadasa, very close to each other, could be fighting for P2 in the championship. Who knows? Because as the standings go, it is very close. Only Shyama Mendes separates them, and this is looking incredibly good for Shyama Mendes from a P3 who could potentially get a P1, having won the consolation as well as potentially the feature race. But it seems like the dust and smoke has settled, and now we're into the long run. Say that, and that's the cursing fashion, and Kevan Samarajiva has taken off. Oh my goodness. There's people flying everywhere. Commentator's curse is real, ladies and gentlemen. There's people flying everywhere. Kevan has taken off in that very distinct car of his, and we are back in the fight for P3 following Shevan Vitarna and Harshala Dharmadasa. Like I mentioned earlier, they will be fighting for P2 in the championship here. Both the all black cars here, with Shevan Vitarna having a little bit, no, I say a little bit, but a little pink with the Moza livery as well, with Harshala Dharmadasa running an all black livery. And might I add that the F4 car running an all black livery just right for some reason. Harshala not out of the blue just yet. I believe that is Nishan behind him chasing him. But the man he's actually having to chase behind is Savirat Nayaka, who is 6.8 seconds behind. And I nearly went to say what could have been an easily clippable moment, but we have passed it. Shevan Vitarna still holding on to that P3 as Fawzul Aleem has run away, and there's smoke. There's more smoke behind. We don't know what has happened there, but it seems as if Savi Ratnayaka, Thiago, no, leaderboard is dipping left, right and center. We don't know. There's more smoke, and there's another car round on the penultimate, I say penultimate, but the main straight. Everyone is going here, there and everywhere. It's as if the consolation race was a preparation for the main race. But everyone is everywhere except for the top 5. And I don't want, there's more dirt. I saw dirt there. Cars kicking up dirt like we see there. They were pretty close. And that's a move by Amjad Iftika on Arshad Iftika. Yes. That's a move by Amjad Iftika on Arshad Iftika. So, ladies and gentlemen, all that pandemonium, we still have 24 minutes to go. Or, I believe that is 27 laps to go. I could be wrong. Let me confirm with Mr. Race Director on that, and I will get back to you. Arshad Iftika is looking to challenge Amjad Iftika, as we are looking to, okay, no, we moved. It's Nishan Saya now. And yes, it was Nishan. He goes wide, and there's a spin again. Oh, Oulton Park claiming victims again in the feature race, as it did in the consolation race. Everyone is everywhere. Harshala Dharmada gets above, and there's a mistake. Harshala in P7. I believe that was Harshala much earlier when I said that there was smoke at the back of the track. But oh dear, Harshala has unfortunately fallen behind, and that spells disaster in the championship fight, really. It means that Shevan could just run away with this. as well as Shyama. Shyama could like run away properly. Harshal left with damage control, I believe, kicking up more dirt from the. I don't know if that is a bug, but there is dirt being kicked up. And it seems as if there is a certain Gesi Tahangamage who wants to. No, that is not Gesi Tahangamage, that is somebody else. My apologies. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, may I direct your attention to the minimap on the right. We can see the dots 1 and 2 down the back straight into the chicane. 1 and 2 getting incredibly close to each other. Fawzul Alim may be coming to the battle for first here as we go to Shan Ibrahim, the number 10 car, and there's more dirt. At this point, I'm just going to believe it's bug, and until I see a car off track, I'm not going to say anything. But that is Shan chasing after Ishan Sire as he gets very close to the edge of the track. But he holds it, and we are still racing, ladies and gentlemen. 22 minutes on the clock, and 26 laps to go, 25. Ladies and gentlemen, we are having an incredible race, and Mr. Race Director has confirmed indeed that it is a race. I mean that it is a lap race. So thank you, Mr. Race Director, for that. We have 25 laps to go, and we are riding alongside Shehan Silva and the leaders. Yes, thank you, Mr. Race Director. The leaders are on the 6th lap, so there is still so much more to go. And I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting race towards the end, because it's a lap race. They're not racing against the time, they're racing against a set number of laps. The drivers should know that they don't have much time to work with. As you look at Shehan Silva, who's gone for a move, very late braking, effectively forcing the other car off the track, but that was a perfectly legal move, and Shan getting caught up in the chaos there. But yes, and I see Shan going into the pits, and yes, there is Shehan Silva who has gone up a position, and we join the fight in P1 and 2 after following the fight at the back of the grid. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the battle for P1, Fawzul Alim versus Shyamal Mendes. Over back with Thiago Pereira and Iham for something we've seen since the last race, the consolation race. These two drivers are going at it right and center. Thiago still managing to hold that P5, but here comes Iham as he's making a move on Thiago. Thiago settles down, and I believe he's not pushing for it anymore. But don't never say never. Thiago can come out of nowhere. Shyamal Mendes is about to get a very distinct red F4 car in his mirrors, and I don't think he's gonna take that any lightly. Shyamal managing a very clear race right now, with the likes of Fawzul chasing behind him. And now we're back with Thiago Pereira and Iham Fazal as they navigate the first chicane of sorts down the little mini straight into a sharper chicane. And I believe we're back with the number 21 car, Yusuf. Everybody seems to have settled in, ladies and gentlemen, so now it's going to be a very interesting race, because Fawzul Alim is slowly gnawing away at the gap between Shyamal Mendes and him, alongside Shevan, who is managing to stay in P3, which could give him good points in the overall championship fight. You join us back with Shamal Mendes coming up behind Shehan Silva, who I'm sure must be screaming for blue flags to be given to him because they're behind him. And Shehan does not look to be giving him space as he effectively puts him on the grass. My goodness. And that's brought Fawzul within a second of Shamal here. And now Shamal set to run away, and Shehan now the barrier between Fawzul and Shamal. I don't think Shehan is going to give up that place easily. No, he has. Never mind. The gap between Fawzul and Shamal is second, and I think that was a car that is behind. There was more crashes. And iRacing just has incredible timing when it comes to catching cars like that. I don't know what's going on with the AI in trying to control the race, but iRacing has now managed to fix on to Fawzul, who is extremely close to Shamal Mendes. Less than a second separates them, to be precise, 5/10 separate them. Fawzul, and as they're both running extremely wide, pushing the absolute limits of the track, when Fawzul has actually gained on Shamal Mendes right now. Look at that, Shamal and Fawzul absolutely on the ragged edge. Fawzul with a spirit, an indomitable spirit, holding on and pushing to try and gain. So far, he's come second in the consolation, and he's looking to win the feature race. This is incredibly close between these two drivers. Fawzul looking incredibly close to Shamal Mendes, and I think Fawzul is make a move, but I believe that Fawzul is not going to make any move. My apologies. I don't think he's going to make a move anytime soon because they still have around 20 laps to go. And I believe there was a little kick of the rear end, and yes, I think that was because Fawzul is effectively losing time to Shamal Mendes now. And yes, it's a game of margins, and now we join Viren Boteju getting chased by a certain Amjad Iftika down in P15, the battle for P15. There's more dust, or I should say smoke particles, as iRacing is catching. Mini lockups, mini spins, all of those could spell the difference between a win and a loss. And here comes, we're on board Shevan Vitarna, who overtakes a lap car. And now we're back with Viren, and now we're back on the fight, and there's another spin in the back of another spin in the background, and that was a red car. I don't know who that was, but another spin, and it seems as if the feature or the consolation race and the heat race is getting to them as Viren makes a beautiful overtake on a lapped car. Oh no, wait, my apologies, that wasn't a lapped car, that was Arshad Iftika. So yes, Viren has made a overtake. My apologies there, Viren. And Arshad is struggling a little bit with a bit of a lock-up. The last thing you want to do is lock up a turn because you just lose all grip. So Viren sailing away now, but Arshad Iftika, in an attempt to try and catch Viren, is taking the wider line, and there's another lock. Now Amjad Iftika sails around inside of Arshad Iftika. Now we're back with Tavi Ratnayaka, who is slowly clawing up that gap between Shevan and himself. Tavi unfortunately had a major incident in the Heat 1 after chasing for P3 effectively for the championship. He is doing incredibly well trying to chase after Shevan now, and I'm sure he's gonna bank on a few slip-ups from Shevan himself, as you see Shamal Mendes nearly getting involved with a lapped car that is. Shamal managing to hold an incredible 2-second gap on Fawzul Alim as Thiago makes a move. Or rather, oh dear, Thiago Pereira and Pereira. Deja vu again, ladies and gentlemen. Thiago now having to fight off Brian Pereira for the P8. Brian looking incredibly close. Thiago holding the inside line. He's not going to let side, but Brian will say, I'll take the outside. And Brian sails past Thiago with a beautiful move to the outside. And Thiago will probably be scratching his head wondering where that came from. But yes, Brian Pereira in P8 and Thiago unfortunately down to P9. Doesn't look to be challenging as well. He's holding on to valuable points here, and he's looking at the long game here. So he can check back on them at the end of the race as well. But unfortunately, Thiago losing out to Brian Pereira in that instinct, or that instance rather. Effectively 19 laps to go now in the feature race, and everybody seems to have settled down in their respective positions. Some on a hunt, some trying to defend, some looking for damage control. Whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen, there's more dust being kicked up, and that is gonna. There's somebody who's gone a little wide there, and I think that was Amjad Iftikhar. Now back on board, Viren Boteju, who has had a lock in a corner, running a little wide, but that won't stop him from challenging the likes of Yusuf in car number 21, because here comes Viren Boteju. Viren going wide a little again. Very close between Viren and Yusuf there. Of course, Viren Boteju, having known with some racing experience, I say some, but he a winner of Mahagastota as well. Viren is looking to try and use that racing experience here to try and overtake Yusuf here. Car number 21 versus car number 19. Viren keeps it tidy through the chicane, but is still on the gearbox of Yusuf here, as we see Shamal Mendes set the new fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute, I believe there is a 1 minute 33.9. And Shamal is, no, wait, I was going to say Shamal was going to run running, but Fawzul Alim has dropped that gap back down. Oh, it's all kicking off here. Somebody goes wide again, and that's Amjad Iftikhar pulling more dirt onto the track. And that corner is going to get a bit dicey later on in the race, as Viren is very close to Yusuf, and I think that was a little too close for Viren's liking. But the fight still rages on, as now we follow Tehan Erang, man who had a very unfortunate incident last race. And there is a Formula V on the track. Somebody has lost their rear wing, and that car looks like a Formula V. I don't know who that is, but unfortunately somebody's lost their rear wing, as you look at Yusuf again. And that's Fawzul Alim, who has taken the lead from Shamal Mendes. What has happened there? But Shama says no, give it. And iRacing is following the wrong car, as you see the fight going up ahead there. And there we go. I think Shamal is back in the lead. What happened there? Following one car, we could see the battle ahead. Good suspense. But Fawzul Alim is right there with Shamal Mendes, and Shamal is locking up into these corners. Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We have a fight on our head between Fawzul Alim and Shamal Mendes. Shamal, the man who is currently really in that first place, getting chased by the man who has won already, who has placed already. He wants that second win here in the feature race, as Fawzul Alim is tucking behind Shamal Mendes and get a slipstream into the sector 3 of this track. Fawzul is right up the Shamal's gearbox, and iRacing nearly went off the wrong car again, as Shamal and Fawzul still do battle into the final corner of Oulton Park here, as Shamal and Fawzul taking the same line. Fawzul still taking that slipstream. I believe Fawzul is going to size up a move into Shamal Mendes. Still no, wrong car. We're following Viren Boteju now. We don't know what happened with Shamal and Fawzul. The gap is still 3/10, as Viren is also very close to Yusuf. There's smoke coming out inside. Was there a lockup from either Fawzul or Shamal, as we're looking at Viren trying to chase after Yusuf in number 21? Yeah, we can see up ahead there. Fawzul dipping to the inside, and I think Shamal Mendes. Mr. Race Director, can we try and change the camera towards Shamal Mendes and Fawzul Alim? We don't know what happened. I think I saw Shamal's car in front of Fawzul's. As you see Viren making a move. A beautiful move, in fact. A beautiful move on Yusuf. And that is Viren Botejo in P13 taking a long awaited move on Yusuf there. And now Viren is set sail for 12th place, who is quite a ways ahead in the form of Praveen Peter. But I believe Viren is going to play the long game now. The likes of behind him. Anything can happen, ladies and gentlemen. Anything can happen. Now Viren fast. We see the gap on the leaderboard. I see Fawzul Alim has fallen a little behind Shamal Mendes. So it appears as if that battle may have taken a toll on Fawzul's tires to a point that it has caused him to drop back. But who knows what can happen. As you see there in the distance, the red car of Fawzul Alim still chasing after Shamal Mendes for P1. Oh, there's a big lock up from Yusuf there, and I believe that was Amjad Iftikhar sailing past. Onboard Shavan Vitarna, and look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Savi Ratnayaka has entered the chat. Savi has clawed back an incredible race and now is chasing after Shavan Vitarna for P3. I say that, but Savi has become a lawnmower, but manages to keep it on the track. Savi Ratnayaka, we know how this man races. He's a good racer. He's still clawing back Shavan Vitarna very slowly, but that gap is slightly increasing. I believe Savi is trying to chase after Shavan, but is getting a little bit mixed up. As I say that, Shavan Vitarna has also locked up into the corner, and I believe Savi is now getting closer. 7/10 off each other now. Savi Ratnayaka versus Shavan Vitarna. Fawzul Alim versus Shamal Mendes. Fawzul has dropped behind Shamal. 2.3 seconds. I wonder what has happened up at the fight. But anyway, now the fight is versus Savi versus Shehan. The battle for P3 here, ladies and gentlemen. Savi Ratnayaka, 4/10 behind the likes of Shavan Vitarna. Getting incredibly close, 3/10 now. Is he going to size a move into the penultimate corner? No, will he make a move into the final corner? It's all kicking off here, ladies and gentlemen. Half the race to go, 15 laps to go. Savi getting incredibly close to Shavan. There's another mistake off. Is that going to upset the drivers? Luckily does not get involved there. But Shavan with an angry Savi Ratnayaka. Revenge, or I should say not revenge, justice for Heat 1. Savi closing on Shavan Vitarna. Is he going to make a... No, he's not. Savi's going to take a wider line. And I believe set up for the quicker run into the little open hairpin. Yes, 2/10 closing in on Shavan Vitarna. Shavan coming in on the nowhere. Here comes Savi, right on his gearbox. Is Savi sizing the move? No, he will still stay behind Shavan Vitarna, as Shavan is in fact coming up against traffic in the form of Amjad Iftikhar. This is going to spell disaster for Shavan if he can't get past him. Savi, on the other hand, is hoping Amjad would slow down. There's the issue. Shavan is getting a bit of toe off of Amjad, but Savi is getting a toe off of both of them. So where is Savi going to stack up on this fight? Savi getting very close to Shavan. There is incredibly close. And finally, Amjad Iftikhar backs out, leaving Savi and Shavan to fight. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Savi is closer than he was last lap. Can Savi make a move into the penultimate or final corner? They're staying incredibly close to each other, but once again, ladies and gentlemen, remember dirty air is still a thing with these cars. Maybe Savi does not have enough downforce. There's a big offbeat. Somebody's gone off. Somebody's doing donuts in the back. We don't know who that was. Someone's gone off. As iRacing still focuses on Savi Ratnayaka looking incredibly close to Shavan Vitarna this time round. Shavan is not taking defensive action, neither is Savi taking offensive action. It seems as if they will stay the way they are right now. And the battle will rage on, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, up ahead, Fawzul Alim has dropped behind Shamal Mendes, and Savi has gone off track. I believe there was a mistake on Savi's part, but he cannot be having that, as Shavan Vitarna is holding a good race, and iRacing believes that there is not more action between them yet, as Buddhika Chaturanga sails round the inside there. and makes that unlap overtake. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you join on board Amjad Iftikhar, who is sitting. Oh, never mind, my bad. We are on board Shevan Vitarna, who has caught up with Savi Ratnayaka, who in turn, I believe, because of that car number 19 has caught up to Shevan, and Savi is back within a minute, and Savi is still chasing Shevan. This fight that is going to go, I think, until the very end of the race. With nearly 12 laps to go in this race, Savi does not have a lot of time. Like he did at the start of the race, as Savi locked up again into that corner, and he does not want those kinds of mistakes. He needs to be very careful with modulation. Remember, like I said at the start of the race, ladies and gentlemen, no ABS, no traction control, all pure driver control. As Savi had a beautiful sector there, I think Shevan had a mistake, and here we go. Savi Ratnayaka sizing up the move on Shevan Vitarna. A late break move from Savi, but Shevan defending absolutely clinically, getting onto the grass as well. My goodness, these two drivers. Savi getting onto the grass as well. Both the drivers using the absolute limits of Oulton Park to try and stay ahead of each other or get ahead of each other. As Savi dips in and out. Apologies for that. But Savi is still hungry for that P3, that final step of the podium. Savi doing his level best to try and stay ahead or to try and get ahead of Shevan Vitarna going into the final corner. A run out of here could mean the difference between P4 and P3 for Savi, as he's getting incredibly close. Savi Ratnayaka still desperately chasing after Shevan Vitarna using the absolute limits of the track. He's 1/10 away. Savi make a move into this corner. No, he won't, but he's going to stay incredibly close to Shevan Vitarna. He's going to try and stay on the gas a little long time round to try and gain a bit of overspeed into the open hairpin of Oulton Park. Around this left-hander, Savi moving to the inside to try and utilize more aerodynamics as opposed to the dirty air. Look at this, they're incredibly close. Shevan Vitarna with a bit of a lock-up. And Savi with a clinical run through that corner. Are we going to see a move from Savi Ratnayaka here? I don't believe so. I think if they can nail this sector, Shevan does not seem... No, wait, Shevan has got it. But Savi looks to have a little overspeed. And Savi is gaining on Shevan with a deja vu, ladies and gentlemen. Dips to the inside this time. Savi and Shevan have made contact. There's contact between Savi and there's a pile-up. Both of them have lost their rear wings. What has happened here? Oh my goodness, there's more chaos. And it's not even the end of the race. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been 11 laps. Savi and Shevan have come into contact and have both lost their wings. And now with Shevan behind, we see Tehan Eranga has actually gained on Shevan Vitarna, and there's Savi running a Formula V-like spec with no rear wing, and that is disaster. And that's Fawzul. There's contact. Fawzul Ali. Fawzul Ali. Contact. What is happening here? We follow Tehan Eranga chasing after the man with barely any rear wing, and Savi Ratnayaka come to a stop on the track, and Tehan Eranga sails past Savi Ratnayaka, who I believe has gone to the pits because it is impossible to drive these cars without a rear wing. You can't get the power down. There's not enough movement to get the power down because the aerodynamics. I say that, but then I see Fawzul Alim still in P2 and Savi in P3. Something's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, but there's pandemonium in the final 10 laps of this race here at Oulton Park. Who knows what's happening? But whatever said and done, Savi has lost his rear wing, and so has Fawzul Alim, the man chasing in P2. The man chasing for the first place against Shaman Mendes is nowhere to be seen. It's absolute chaos here, ladies and gentlemen. As you're watching Buddhiga Chaturanga try to fight off, or not fight off, I think that is a lapped car, and Buddhiga Chaturanga has seemingly lost all control of his car there. And I believe he's going to go to the pits. Yes, he has. I say that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I may have got it mixed up. I think that is the end of the race. I believe that is the end of the race with all the cars off the track. Yes, it is. It wasn't laps, it was timed. So that means Shaman Mendes, P1, winning the race with Fawzul Alim in P2 and Savi Ratnayaka in P3. That was confusing. I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. End of the race. It was a timed race, it wasn't a lapped race. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. I believe that is Shaman Mendes with a resounding victory in P1, winning the feature race, followed by Fawzul Alim in P2, Savi Ratnayaka in P3, Tehane Ranga in P4, Harshila Dharmadasa in P5, Brian Pereira in P6, Ayam Fazal in P7, Shevan Vitarna P8, Thiago Pereira in P9, and Buddhiga Chaturanga rounding off the top 10 in 10th place. And I believe that is the end of the feature race and the end of the round, round 2 of the CMSC F4 championship in iRacing. Absolute chaos and pandemonium here, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to everyone, and I believe it was a race to forget for some people, but it was a good race nonetheless. I will see you all next week for the next round, round 3 here. But that has been round 2 at Oulton Park. My name's Nevan. See you all in the next one. Goodbye.